Today we are going to start the chapter surface chemistry. Before we start discussing about the chapter, let me walk you through how we are going to access the revision notes and test in clay6.com. So if you go to clay6.com and click on practice, we have different packages available here. And since we are discussing about NEET, if we go to NEET Premium, at the top you have revision notes. If you click on revision notes, it opens in a new tab, and here we are having tests for different subjects, and each subject you will have chapter wise test, as well as we have NEET full test, which will have actually two sections in it. One that is have test which is prepared by Clay6 tutor, and the other section is past papers. So let us start the chapter, that is surface chemistry. So what do we mean by surface chemistry, or what do we study in surface chemistry? So surface chemistry is the one which is going to deal with the study of your physical and chemical phenomena. It is going to deal with your physical and chemical phenomena which is occurring at the boundary separating two bulk phases. That is what here we say, the accumulation of molecular species at the surface rather than bulk of solid or liquid, we call it as adsorption. So here in surface chemistry, when we talk about, we are going to talk about two important concepts, that is adsorption and absorption. So when we say adsorption, what is the concept of your adsorption? So when we say adsorption, it is nothing but the phenomena of attracting and retaining the molecules of a substance on the surface of a solid, retaining the molecules of a substance on the surface of a solid. So of course, when we say adsorption, we are having two different terms, that is called as adsorbent and adsorbate. Adsorbent and adsorbate, when we say what is adsorbent and what is adsorbate. So the molecular species or substance which accumulate at the surface, you will call it as adsorbate. The molecular species or substance which accumulates at the surface, we call it as adsorbate. So when we say and the adsorbent is the surface on which adsorption actually takes place. So adsorbent is the surface at material on which adsorption is going to take place, that is adsorbent, and the molecular species or substance on which the actually accumulation at the surface takes place, we call it as adsorbate. Hence, when we talk about adsorption, we should know what is adsorbate and what is adsorbent. And when we talk about your next is your, what are all the factors that is going to affect the adsorption of gases by liquid? What are all the factors that is going to affect? So of course, when we talk about factors affecting your adsorption, are nothing but the nature and surface area of the adsorbent which we are going to use in it. The nature and surface area of the adsorbent which we use, and of course nature of the gas being adsorbed. The nature of the gas being adsorbed will also play a role, because we say different gases are adsorbed at are to different extent even by the same solid. Even if we consider same solid, the adsorption level of the gases will differ. And when we say the critical temperature, as the critical temperature of a gas increases, it is easier to liquefy and it is also more readily adsorbed. As the critical temperature of a gas is going to increase, we say that it becomes easy to liquefy and it is also more readily absorbed. So why we say that critical temperature is going to impact or it is going to affect the adsorption? higher the critical temperature, the easier it is to liquefy the gas, as greater their intermolecular forces to attraction between the molecules of the gas. So when we say temperature, as the temperature increases, adsorption decreases. As the temperature increases, adsorption decreases. And the next factor is pressure. As the at constant temperature, the adsorption of a gas increase, but with increase in pressure. And when we say activation of the solid adsorbent, it is totally increasing the adsorbing power of the adsorbent. It is totally increasing the adsorbing power of the adsorbent. And there are two different types of adsorption. One we say it as physiorption and the other one is chemisorption. So when we say physiorption, basically it is going to occur because of the van der Waals force of attraction. This basically occurs because of your van der Waals force of attraction. And the chemisorption, when we say, it is caused because of the chemical bond formation. It is caused because of the chemical bond formation. So do remember, we should learn the difference between physisorption and your chemisorption. So when we say physiorption, it is simple to say that it is not specific in nature. That is, you can say all gases are adsorbed on the surface to an extent. To a limited extent, it can be adsorbed. But when we say about chemisorption, it is highly specific in nature. When we say about chemisorption, it is highly specific in nature. And of course, our physisorption is reversible in nature, but the chemisorption is irreversible. And the most important difference, we can say that physiorption is more easily liquefiable gases are adsorbed more readily. But if we say about chemisorption, gases which can react with the adsorbent will show actually a chemisorption. Hence, it is important to learn the difference between physiorption and your chemisorption. And next is your adsorption isotherms. What do we say as adsorption isotherm? The variation in the amount of gas adsorbed by the adsorbent at constant temperature with change in pressure. It is shown by a curve, and that curve is called as adsorption isotherm. That is shown by a curve, and we say that it is adsorption isotherm. And Freundlich is the person who proposed this relation to show a relation between the extent of adsorption and pressure. So that is why the adsorption equation says as x by m will become is equal to k into p to the power of 1 by n. So if there are solutions which is being involved, then your equations will just change as x by m is equal to your k into c to the power of 1 by n, where x we take it as the amount of adsorbate, m is mass of the adsorbent, p is your pressure, and in case of concentration, if we take, c is the concentration of the adsorbate. K and n is actually a constant value, but do remember n is always greater than 1. This is called as Freundlich adsorption isotherm equation, or it is a graph. So basically, when we say what are all the places we use our adsorption. So when we say solids can also adsorb solutes from solution, like they adsorb gases, you can take an example as litmus solution becomes colorless when we are shaking it with charcoal. And yes, of course, chemisorption will increase with increase in temperature. After saturation, it will start decreasing. And another important use, charcoal removes the traces of air by its adsorption from a vessel evacuated by vacuum pump to give a very high vacuum. So there are certain applications application of adsorption. You can also say that adsorption is being used in controlling humidity. That is, silica and aluminium gels can absorb moisture and they remove humidity. You can even think of separation of inert gases. That is, different inert gases are absorbed to different extent on coconut charcoal. So there are different applications of our adsorption concept. And next we say about is what is. So here are few applications of adsorption, and next we have to learn about catalysis. What is catalysis? So we know catalyst is a substance which will alter the rate of a reaction, and they themselves do not take part in the reaction. Actually, they are chemically inert. So when we say substance which alters the rate of a chemical reaction and themselves they remain chemically inert, chemically and quantitatively unchanged after the reaction, we say that name as catalyst, but that phenomena is called as catalysis. The phenomena or the process, we call it as catalysis. Hence, when we are saying about catalysis, we are having two different types. One we say it as promoters and the other one we say it as poison. Promoters are the one which will enhance, or substance which enhance the activity of the catalyst, or promoter substance which enhance the activity of the reaction with the help of your. So we say that it is a term we use as promoters. And substance which decreases the activity of the catalyst, we say that it is a poison. Substance which is going to enhance the performance of a catalyst, we say it as a promoters, and the substance which will decrease the performance or the you can say activity of the catalyst, we say the term to be a poison. Hence there are two different types of catalysis. One we say it as homogeneous and heterogeneous. So what do we say in homogeneous catalysis and what is heterogeneous catalysis? So the reactant and the catalyst, if they are in same phase, that can be a liquid or a gas, that is different. But if the reactant and the catalyst are in same phase, then we say that it is a process or the phenomena is homogeneous catalysis. And if suppose we are saying the reactant and the catalyst are in different phase, the reactant and the catalyst are in different phase, then we say that it is a heterogeneous catalysis. And when we are talking about adsorption theory is also helpful, that is in determining the mechanism of heterogeneous catalysis. It is helpful in determining the mechanism of heterogeneous catalysis. And yes, of course, what are all the concept or the term of our mechanism of your catalytic activity? It is simple: diffusion of your reactant towards the surface of the catalyst, or adsorption of the reactant molecule on the surface of the catalyst, and then it happens, that is occurrence of a chemical reaction between the reactant and the catalyst. Then that will give you an intermediate product, and yes, of course, after that, desorption of the product molecule from surface because of the lack of its affinity to the catalyst surface, and then we have diffusion, and finally the product molecule away from the surface of the catalyst. So the mechanism is basic features which we say it as the process of your product formation. And when we say about solid catalyst, what are all the features or what are all the important features of your solid catalyst? First one, we say it as activity. Activity term, when we use, it is nothing but the capacity of the catalyst to increase the speed of the chemical reaction. And yes, of course, the capacity or the activity will totally depend upon the extent of chemisorption. and the adsorption should be reasonably strong, but it should not be so strong that the absorbed molecule will become immobile, and hence there will be no place for other reactants to get absorbed. But suppose if we are having, or if a reaction is taking place if in absence of catalyst, and but in absence of catalyst, for example, H2 and O2 do not react, and that can be stored like that for a very long period. But once when we start using a catalyst, the reaction takes place. And the second concept is what is selectivity. We should always remember that for any reaction to take place, we cannot use any random catalyst. For a particular reaction, a specific catalyst suits that particular reaction and it should be used. Hence, we could say that selectivity is a concept of a catalyst. That means it should have the ability to direct the reaction to form a particular product. It should direct the reaction in order to form a particular product. Hence, it is totally dependent that selectivity of a catalyst for a particular reaction plays a very major role. And in that type of catalyst, when we say selectivity, we have a name, that is your shape selective catalysis or catalyst. So when we say shape selective catalysis, the example is zeolites. And this reaction taking place, the reaction taking place in zeolites will totally depend upon that they are good shape selective catalyst because of their structure. That is, they are called as honeycomb like structure, and they are basically three-dimensional network of silicates where some silicon atoms are replaced by your aluminium atom, and then they form a network that is aluminium, oxygen and silicates. So when we say what is shape selective catalysis, that is a catalytic reaction which depends upon the pore structure of the catalyst and the size of your reactant and molecule, we call it as shape selective catalysis. And hence we are saying that when you are having a curve or the size and shape of your reactant and product molecules is going to depend upon the type of catalyst we have selected for any reaction to take place. Widely used catalyst in the petrochemical industry for cracking of hydrocarbon and isomerization, we are using as your zeolites. So it is an important catalyst, or zeolites is being used for an important purpose. And then next concept says is what are enzymes? Enzymes are actually the complex or nitrogenous compound which are being produced by your plant and animals. And they are protein molecules of high molecular mass and form colloidal solution with water. They will form colloidal solution of with water, and they are very effective catalysts. They are very effective catalysts, and they catalyze many reactions which is going to occur in our bodies of your animals and plants to maintain their life process. That is why sometimes even enzymes are called as biochemical catalyst, and the phenomena it is called as biochemical catalysis. The phenomena of the biochemical catalysis. So enzymes becomes an important part that in our day-to-day life. For example, if we can say inversion of cane sugar, where invertase enzymes is being used in order to convert glucose into glucose and fructose. Invertase enzymes are being used in order to convert glucose into glucose and fructose, or we are also using an enzyme for the conversion of glucose into ethyl alcohol. we are using in order to convert glucose into ethyl alcohol, or we are also using in the purpose of conversion of starch into maltose. For that we are using an enzyme that is called as diastase, which is going to convert starch to maltose. And maltase enzyme will convert maltose into glucose. So there are different enzymes which is being used for different purpose. For example, we can say decomposition of urea into ammonia and carbon dioxide. So it's, of course, in stomach we are having pepsin enzyme which will convert protein into or proteins to peptides. So there are different enzymes which has become and which is very important for our day-to-day life. For example, simple thing which we are using or which is being used, that is conversion of your milk into curd. We are having an enzyme that is lactobacilli which is being present in curd, and that is helping in order to convert milk to curd. So there are different enzymes which is being used. And the next important factor or the next important concept is what are colloids. So this chapter is merely a theoretical chapter and it's very simple. Hence it would be very simple to learn as well as to score marks from this chapter. The questions are very simple to attempt it. And when we talk about colloids, basically colloids are classified based on different concepts. Colloids are being classified based on two concepts. One we say it as based on nature, and the second one we say it as based on type. Before that, let us say that a colloidal is nothing but it is a heterogeneous system in which one substance is dispersed as very fine particles in another substance, that we call it as dispersion medium. That we call it as a dispersion medium. So when we say disperse phase and dispersion medium, yes, of course, you can classify your colloids based on the nature, based on the nature and based on type. And when we are saying based on their physical state, it can be classified. That is what we say it as your dispersed phase and dispersion medium. So when it is being classified based on this, physical state, it says dispersed phase and dispersed medium. Hence, suppose if we say that the dispersed phase we are using is solid and the dispersion medium is liquid. Hence, those type of colloid, the name given is sol. When you are using your dispersed phase to be a solid and dispersed medium to be liquid, the colloids form is sol. So do remember, you will have a chart in your book, or there are different combinations of colloid. Hence, we should know, it's very important to know the like solid, liquid, solid, solid, solid plus gas. This one says about your dispersed phase and this is your dispersion medium. Hence, if you are saying solid and gas, it is called as aerosol. So this name and the type of colloid formation is very, very important from this chapter. For example, if you are saying liquid plus your gas, liquid plus solid, it is called as gel. And do remember that we need to learn at least one example of each type. Liquid, we give the name as emulsion. So it is very important that you know the different names of the colloid when you are dispersed phase and dispersion medium combination. And when we talk about the classification of your colloids based on nature, we say that it is two types, that is your lyophilic and lyophilic colloids and your lyophobic. So some substance which we say lyophilic means it is other meaning or general meaning, we can say that it is liquid loving. So some substance which can form colloids directly on mixing them with a suitable liquid, and these colloids are called as lyophilic colloids. For example, we can say it as your gum, gelatin, rubber. This is a combination. So they are mixed directly with a suitable liquid, and that liquid is considered as the dispersion medium there. Hence we say that it is a lyophilic colloids. And yes, of course, they are also called as reversible soul, as in these souls collides, that is when the dispersion phase is separated from dispersion medium, the soul can be formed again by just mixing the dispersion phase and the medium. So it is a reversible one. And when we say that it is lyophobic colloids, that is your liquidating. Some substance cannot form colloid when you try to directly mix them with a liquid. Their colloidal soles are basically prepared by some special methods we need to use in order to prepare that, and that then those type of colloids we call it as lyophobic colloids. But the condition is they are also called as irreversible colloid, as on precipitation they will not give back you the colloids, or when you try to simply mixing the dispersed phase and dispersion medium. And the next one is based on the type of particles of your dispersed phase. Based on the type of particles of the dispersed phase, the colloids are classified into different types. One is your multimolecular, macromolecular. So when we say multimolecular, many particles of the dispersed phase will actually aggregate together to form species, that is having the size of your colloidal particles to be between 1 to 1000 nanometer. And these colloids, you are calling it as multimolecular colloids. And in the same way, when we talk about macro, it's of course macro, large. Substance with large molecules is being used in suitable solvent in order to form a solution. But yes, of course, this macromolecules should be, or it might be, colloidal in nature, or must be in colloidal range. So these solutions, you will call it as macromolecular colloid, and of course, they will have certain resemblance of your true solutions in many ways, like your starch, cellulose, proteins are natural macromolecules. And the next one is called as associated colloids, that is some substance at high concentration, they will start acting, or they will start behaving as a colloid because of the formation of aggregates. But what happens when the temperature goes, or when the concentration becomes low, they behave like normal or strong electrolytes. So those such colloidals are called as associated colloids. Some substance at high concentration, they will have the tendency of behaving as the colloids due to the formation of aggregates. But when the concentration is low, or when it is lowered, it starts behaving like normal strong electrolytes. And then those aggregates are formed, and sometimes we would have heard about the concept that is called as micelles. They are called as micelles. And next one, we have to know what is Kraft temperature, or what we call it as your Kraft temperature. The formation of your micelles will actually take place only above particular temperature. Micelle formation takes place, or the formation takes place above a particular temperature, and that you call it as Kraft temperature. And there are different methods which is being used in order to prepare colloids. What are all the methods we know? Or there are certain important methods which we are using in order to prepare colloids. One method, we say it as your chemical method. So when we say chemical methods, colloids can be prepared by your chemical reaction, which will help you in the formation of molecules by the concept of either your double decomposition or oxidation or reduction or hydrolysis. So different reactions can take place in order to form a product, and that product should be a colloid. Hence, we can say that the chemical method being used is helpful in preparing a colloid. And the second method, we say it as your electrical disintegration method, or very famous name, we say it as Bredick's arc method. This is basically applied to obtain colloidal soles of metals like silver, gold, and platinum. This method is being used in order to obtain a colloidal like your silver, gold, and platinum. And the third method which we use in order to prepare a colloid is peptization method. In this, the process which we use is for converting a precipitate into a colloidal sole by shaking it with dispersion medium in the presence of a small amount of electrolyte. In the presence of a small amount of electrolyte, and the electrolyte which we are going to use, or which we use in the method of peptization, it is called as peptizing agent. It is called as peptizing agent. And during peptization, the precipitate absorbs the one of the ion of your electrolyte on its surface, and this will cause, or this will help you in making a charge to develop on the precipitate, which ultimately break up in a small particles of the size that we get a colloids there. So there are three different methods which we are using in order to prepare a colloids. But there are different methods which is being used in order to purify a colloids. So the process which is being used for reducing the amount of impurities to a required minimum, then you call that as purification of colloids. Some important or some useful methods which is being used are, first we can say dialysis. This is a method where we use, or you can say dialysis is a process of separating the particles of a colloid by means of diffusion, by means of diffusion through a suitable membrane. And the other method which we are using, it is called as electrodialysis. Basically what happens is dialysis becomes a slow process, and this process can be increased, or the speed can be enhanced by using an electric field is being applied to your metal electrodes, and then the ions present in the colloidal solution will migrate out to your oppositely charged electrodes, and it is becoming possible if the dissolved substance in your impure colloid is an electrolyte. So electrodialysis is a method which is just used in order to speed up the process of dialysis. And next we say ultrafiltration. This is the process of your separating the colloids from the soluble solutes, that is impurities, using specially prepared filters which will be actually, or which are permeable to all the substance except the colloids. So colloidal particles will have the tendency, or they are allowed to pass through the filter paper because the pores are too large. But basically when we use an ultrafilter paper, which is prepared by soaking the filter paper in a colloidal solution, like we are using for hardening by formaldehyde, and then when you dry it, the pores becomes too small, that as this slow process, pressure or some suction is applied to speed it up. So the colloidal particles left on the ultrafilter paper are stirred, and then with fresh dispersion medium, it will form a pure colloids. So this is the method being used in order to purify. And next is, what are all the properties of your colloids. We are having different properties of colloids. One, we say it as colligative property. The particles in colloids are bigger aggregates than those in a true solution. Hence, we say that the number of particles in a colloid is lesser than a true solution of the same concentration. And next we say, what is your Tyndall effect? Tyndall effect is nothing but the scattering of the light by the particles which is present in your colloidal solution when you are trying to view at right angle to the passage of your light. So we say that the concept is called as your Tyndall effect, and of course the color of your colloidal solution is going to depend upon the wavelength of the light scattered by the dispersed particle, their size and nature of your dispersed particle, and of course the manner in which we try to view that. And next one, we say it as what is Brownian movement. So the Brownian movement is nothing but the continuous zigzag movement of the colloidal particles, and in a colloidal solution we say that the concept is called as Brownian movement, and this is totally going to depend on the size of the particle and the viscosity of the colloid. It is going to totally depend upon the size and viscosity. So based on size and viscosity, if we say smaller the size of the particle, then lesser will be its viscosity, hence faster will be its motion. So these movement is being responsible for the stability of the soul. This movement is being for the stability of the soul. And always remember, colloidal particles will have an electric charge, and the nature of this particle is same on all the particles in a given colloidal solution, that can be either positive or negative. So this is all we have based on the concept. And when we try to learn about few definition, that is your desorption is nothing but the process of removing your adsorbed substance from the surface on which it is being adsorbed. You call it as desorption. And when the molecular species of a substance enters in the bulk phase in solid or liquid, we call it as absorption. And yes, of course, when both absorption and adsorption takes place simultaneously, the concept is called as sorption process. And do remember, adsorption is an exothermic process because heat is being released whenever molecules are adsorbed on the surface. Hence, we could say that the rate of adsorption will decrease whenever there is a increase in temperature. And a curve. So colloidal solution, we are using different methods to prepare. You can see peptization, electrophoresis, and do remember an emulsion is a colloid where the dispersion in which both the dispersion medium and your dispersed phase are liquid. So important part to focus on this chapter is different types of colloids when you are having different combination, and yes, of course, learn about your adsorption concept. And based on our analysis, let us try taking a test from this chapter. So here, if we go to chemistry, we are having chapter wise test available here, and each bubble represents a test. And if you look at the color, green color indicates that the test is already taken. Yellow color says that it is in progress, that is we have not completed the test. Blue, it is yet to be taken, and R is actually a random test if we need additional practice from that particular chapter. So let us try taking a test from surface chemistry. So when we are trying to take a test or when you are trying to practice past papers, do have focus or do have a note in mind about that time, because answering a question within the specified time is very, very important in order to crack any competitive exam. So here let us see the first question. Which of the following statement is correct about the Langmuir's adsorption? So when we say adsorption, what are all the properties of adsorption? So always remember Langmuir's adsorption is monomolecular, that is the gas adsorbed will form unimolecular layer. Hence we can say that our option A is right, it forms mono layer. So let us save that and go to next question. Platinum can absorb in the space between its atom 900 times its volume of hydrogen, and this process is called as, we should know about the name of the process. What we say it as our name. So when we say as adsorb in space between 900 times its volume hydrogen. So what should be the process we call it? The process is called as occlusion. The process is called as occlusion because adsorption of 900 times its volume of hydrogen by palladium in the space between its atom, the term is called as occlusion. Let us save that and go to next. Which adsorption takes place at low temperature? Which adsorption takes place at low temperature? It is a well-known fact that physical adsorption will take place at low temperature because the delta H value for that would be low. Hence, we can say option A to be the right. Save that and let us go to next. According to Friedrich isotherm, adsorption isotherm, which of the following is correct? By looking at the equation itself, we could say that x by m is directly proportional to P1, x by m is directly proportional to P naught, as well as x by m is equal to your or directly proportional to P1 by, because everything is relating with pressure. Hence, option D should be right because all the above are correct for different range of pressure. The only thing is x by m is directly proportional to pressure. The only change in all the option is your pressure value. Hence, option D should be right. Let us save that and go to next. Which of the following is not applicable to chemisorption? When we study the properties of chemisorption, it's very simple to answer these types of questions. In chemisorption, do remember effect of pressure is actually not given by Friedrich adsorption isotherm. Friedrich pressure is not given by your Friedrich isotherm. So option A should be the right answer. Let us save that and go to next. Incorrect statement, we have to pick it from the given option. So when we are saying incorrect statement, we always say that Friedrich isotherms will acquire a form x by m is directly proportional to P. Directly proportional to, actually it should be P naught. At high pressure, the Friedrich isotherms will acquire a form which should be x by m is directly proportional to P naught, but they have given it to be P. Hence, this should be the wrong statement. Let us save that and go to next. Hydrophilic colloids are stable due to. Why hydrophilic colloids are stable? Always remember hydrophilic colloids is nothing but we say as water loving colloids, and the colloid particles are attracted towards water. That means we can say that it is a reversible Soule, and the stability of a colloidal system is nothing but the capability of the system to remain as it is. So stability will get disturbed by aggregation and sedimentation phenomena, which are actually driven by the colloid tendency to reduce the surface area. Hence, you can say that hydrophilic colloids are stable because of the layer of dispersion medium on their particles. Because of the layer of dispersion medium on the particles. Hence, our option D should be right. Let us save that and go to next. A soul has positively charged colloidal particles. Which of the following is required in lowest concentration for coagulation? So do remember, according to Hardy's rule, the ions having opposite charge to soul particle will cause the coagulation. And hence you can say greater the valency of oppositely charged ion, more is your coagulating power. So of course for your option B, the charge will be high. Hence let us save that and go to next. Which of the following process best describes the purification of muddy water by addition of alum? It should be, it's a well-known option that your coagulation will be the method, because what is alum? Alum is a double sulfate, or you can say it is sulfate of potash and aluminium. And in this case, it will break into potassium sulfate, which will remain in solution, and a basic it will form, that is your aluminium sulfate. So the basic sulfate of aluminium, the composition of which will be undetermined, precipitates as a more or less gelatinous and flocculent mass. So by addition of minute amount of alum, water is rendered capable of for most perfect filtration. Hence, we can say that the method being used is coagulation. Save that and go to next. In the preparation of AgI, Sol, the excess of AgNO3 is added to potassium iodide solution. The particles of the sol will acquire, it's once again Ag plus, hence it should be a positive charge. So we can say it will have positive charge. Save that and go to next. So when we say about which of the following method is not employed for the purification of colloids, if you look at the option, it's very simple to identify that your option D should be right, because peptidization you are using in order to, it is responsible for the formation of stable dispersion of your colloidal particles in dispersion medium. Peptidization is not the method for purification, it is the method for preparation. Hence, option D should be right. Let us save that and go to next. The stability of dispersed phase in lyophobic colloid is due to, why the lyophobic colloids are stable? It's simple, formation of your, the dispersed phase in a lyophobic colloid is stabilized because of the formation of your electrical layer between the two phases. So it is because of the formation of electrical layer between the two phases. Hence option B should be right. Let us save that and go to next. The ability of ion to bring about coagulation of a given colloidal solution will depend upon, the ability is going to depend upon your colloidal solution will totally depend upon your magnitude as well as the sign of the charge. Coagulation will depend upon your magnitude and sign of charge. Hence option D should be right. Let us save that and go to next. The coagulation of 10 centimeter cube of gold sol is completely prevented by addition of 0.025 gram of starch. So do remember a concept, gold number. Gold number is the weight of protective colloid in milligrams. It is a weight of protective colloids in milligram, which will prevent the coagulation of your gold soul, which prevents. So they have given us the value, gold number of starch we have to calculate. Hence the value prevented by SO 0.025 into 10 centimeter, it is in cube. Hence in milligram it should be, so it should be 0.025 into 1000, which will give you 25 milligram. Hence option D should be the right answer. Let us save that and go to next. The critical micellization concentration. It's a very simple factor of your SOAP activities when you study CMC. CMC is the concentration at which micellization will actually start. It is the point at which it will start. Hence, you can say from the given option that the concentration at which micellization begins is the point. We call it as critical micellization concentration. Hence, our option A should be right. Let us save that. Okay, we have completed all the 15 questions. Let us end the test. So here we have done all the 15 questions to be correct. But in case, suppose if we are going wrong anywhere, the questions will be indicated red in color. And if you leave any question unattempted, it is indicated orange in color. And it's very important that suppose if you are gone wrong anywhere, you can click on the question. It will give you the right option, and additional to that, you will have an explanation of that particular question. So do practice taking test and learn the concepts of the chapter with the help of revision notes. It will help you to go through the notes in short duration. And so that's all we have for today's class. In case if you have any doubts or any question from the chapter, do reach out to us with the help of ask feature here, or you can use Telegram chat application to ask your question. But in case if you have any doubts in any specific chapter of any subject, you can reach out to Play 6 Management for one-to-one tutoring from Play 6 Tutor. Thank you, students. We'll catch you up again tomorrow with a new chapter.